Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Application Project 1. In this video, I will review the requirements and everything you need to know to complete this project. The objective of the project is for you to apply the concepts discussed to a real company using real data. So to take the theory that we talked about, for you to actually do it and see it with the real company today. It's worth 16% of your grade, 16 points. And there's three distinctive parts to this. And the points for each section are identified. It's due no later than 11:59 on January 6, 2020. Earlier submission is just fine. I'll be reviewing and grading them as submitted. If you're not sure of something or want to talk beforehand, just let me know. Submission format is PowerPoint. Do work in Excel, copy and paste it in Point, use the notes section, and attach the Excel worksheet. Please feel free to use video or audio comments to explain things. How are we going to grade the project? Organization and presentation, 20%. Visualization of data is really important because it communicates what you have learned. And the clarity by which your communication is really helps the effectiveness of it. It demonstrates understanding and not just words. Accuracy of computations and formulas, 30%. Clarity and depth of responses, 30%. Do you really understand it? When we're looking in finance, it's always asking what's the next question to go deeper until you understand it. You can't start at a high level and make a conclusion like net income is up. Well, no, which line was it up on? Why was it up? So you really need to go be clear and go to some level of depth and avoid generalities. Integration of topics. How well does everything flow together? This you'll be working on. This company and this project will continue over the next couple of weeks. But how do you put all the pieces together? It's just not answering questions. It comes back to the presentation, which is the integration. How does one area impact the other? How do they relate to each other? What are the mechanics? Well, you have your choice of one of three companies: Allison Transmission, Commercial Metals, and Spirit Aero Systems. Where do you get the information? Well, you should use the 10K and or the investor presentation. So you might want to go back and review the video on introduction to the 10K and investor presentation. There's a lot of material there. Please read the 10K, read the investor presentation before you do anything else. Okay? Take the time to do it. You're going to use it for the entire semester. Okay, part 1. The company and how do they make money? 5 points. What's the company's name and logo? What are the products and services sold by the company? Who are the company's customers? Think carefully. May not always be the end user. What makes the company unique? What makes them different than the other people in the industry? Avoid generalities here. What are the revenue drivers? These things here, the revenue drivers, which we talked about, is probably the most important thing to start with to understand a company. What's the volume? What's the rate? And do it at a detailed level. You can't just do it at the total level. You have to drop down to a specific product, customer line, or customer. Then, once you identify that, prove that it's correct. You can prove that it's correct by taking your volume driver and rate driver to get you close to sales. And you would do this for 2 years. And this should be 2 to 4 slides. Use the quadrant approach, and you'll see an example of that in a moment. This is an example of the quadrant. This is the company, is the DXL. men's apparel. They have 345 stores. They have a unique customer. Males of all ages, waist 70, size 38 and up. This is big and tall, as well as those that may be a little rotund. Customer values, and this is very important here, because what distinguishes their customer from others is they value convenience, comfort, selection, and fit over price. Okay, so if you're 6'6", you are more concerned about how does it fit, how does it look, than the price. And they have the largest brand selection of big and tall brands, but all of these are name brands. And when they look at it, one-stop shopping, they have wide aisles, larger changing rooms, highly trained staff, bright atmosphere, brands, and on-site tailoring. So this is a picture of DXL. How do they make money? Number of stores times sales per store. They had 342 stores. Average sales per store, 1.36 million. The level of comparison is same-store sales. And I computed it at 467, 976, and the actual was 47, the same. So I calculated it. Now, in DXL, they just have stores. The companies you're looking at actually will have more. Next one that I'd like to share an example of, is Steel Dynamics. And I'm going to be using Steel Dynamics for this semester because I like it. It's one of the largest, most diversified U.S. steel producers. Has 11.4 million tons of capacity. There's your coming back. Tons is my volume. This is the type of product that they make, and these are all different types of steel. And then here's the sales by end market. We can see a lot of it goes into construction, appliance, auto, and we have a picture of the company. Now, how do they make money? Well, I started at the top. I went to the supplemental financial information, and what I see for each of the quarters is the breakdown: steel, fabrication, metals, and recycling. So they got 4 segments, okay? And there's your consolidated total. But when I started looking, I found average external sales price per ton, average iron cost, and I got other poundage information. So if I have that, if I have the total, I can break it down. Okay, so in the steel business, here's steel, right here. Here's the different types of steel, but I'm going to just focus on steel because that's the largest one here. And what I can find is if I take the volume, external sales price, 988, times that gives me sales computed 25, and the difference is close. Okay, but what I did is I found the steel. Okay, here's the average price. I multiply that, and I come up with the sales of 2459, 263, 404. Then I went back up here, 2,475,044, and that's the actual. So I came pretty close by using that. Okay, so that's an example here. I went and did each one of these. I understand the metals recycling. They buy scrap metal and recycle it for use for the company and sale. So what I did is I explained what happened at the same time. But I was able to compute the difference between them. At this point, you just need to do this. This is covered in a subsequent one. And if you want to get a jump start on it, what you can do is look at the video sales analysis. Here's another one. Next, so that's we're going to start. Let's go back over and review that. What's the company's name and logo? What are the products and services sold? Who are the company's customers? Think carefully. What makes the company unique? What are the revenue drivers? volume, driver, and rate at a detailed level. Show how you multiply. Prove it. Use 2 to 4. This is 5 points. Take part 2. Display financial statements in a meaningful way. It's worth 6 points. So what I'd like you to do is create a 5-year summary income statement, starting from oldest to newest. Very important to start with the oldest and newest because we're going to build this going forward. You have to select which components of the income statement are most meaningful to your company. Each company is going to be different. It's not going to look exactly the same. So you'll do a 5-year summary, a 5-year common size. You're going to show the income graphically in a meaningful way, create a 5-year summary balance sheet, starting with oldest to newest, create a 5-year common size balance sheet. What I want you to do is extract the data from the 10K into Excel, then create schedules in Excel and copy into PowerPoint. What I'm going to do now is take you and walk you through part 2 using the worksheet. So what you have in this section is you have the notes, which are in PowerPoint, and then you have the Excel. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to extract data from the 10K. And what I've done is I went to the 10K and I pulled it in. And notice I pulled in a number of years. So this is just sort of a continuation. You only need to do 5 years. I did this last year, so I just added it on. But what I had to do is I brought these across in actual numbers. Now, I always got to look to make sure that this is right. So what I did is I went to the 10K and I extracted it. So let me just show you. What I'm going to do is I am going to bring up, this is Steel Dynamics, and I am going to bring up the SEC filings, and I'm looking for annual filings. So I'll put that in and do search, and up comes the annual report. Now notice I have different formats to download. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download them in Excel, is that I can find the consolidated statements of operations, and all I did was copy and paste. It becomes important to bring them into one central place. You may need to line them up because they don't always line up. I then moved on to the income statement, and what I did up here is I summarized them, and I thought these were the meaningful costs for me. So notice that I did them in dollars. I rounded them, computed this number. Then I brought them into a percent into the common size, where I did this. Okay, so this is always going to be the 100%, and everything is based on that. Now, we're not asking the questions right now. We're getting the data. We're going to move into using this information in Project 2. So this Excel document is one that I've been using, so this is for Project 2. But what we can clearly see as we're looking here, we can see some trends, what's happening. I then showed it on a graph, and that's what I needed to do there. I did the same thing on a balance sheet. Not everything is material, okay? So, but again, on all of this, if you notice, I referenced all of this. So you can always look and say, this is where it came from. That's what you want to do too. You don't want to necessarily, you don't. You don't want to just put the number in because there's a risk. So if my input error is somewhere, it's going to be on this worksheet, and it's easier to correct. Then we move to the cash flow, and what you can see is here's my examples of the computation. You can see where the data comes from and where it is calculated. So we have cash flow, balance sheet, and income statement. We're not doing the analytics right now. We will get there. Okay, so we're only going to use, at this point, you're only going to use these 4 worksheets. Okay, so that's out there. If you have any questions, just... The last section is part 3, cash flow and working capital. This is 4 points. Compute the gross working capital, net working capital, free cash flow. Compute it the three ways. And what's the difference between the cash flows and what is it telling us? Don't necessarily repeat the definition. I know what the definition is. But what's it telling us? Compute the cash conversion cycle and create a summary table or graph to display it. For the cash flow, you only have to do 3. And once again, if you come and look under cash flow and liquidity, you're going to find that, again, I set the formulas up for the computation so you can see what it is. Simple cash flow is cash flow from operations, which comes from cash flow statement, less acquisitions and capital expenditures, which comes from the cash flow statement. You can see where they come from and go from there. Then there's the liquidity measurements. Let me move this over for you. And again, I have laid this all out. Okay, so these are the formulas. Now, once you get your data, then you can do the analysis. So for cash flow, it's cash flow and liquidity. This project covers everything that we should have, what you should have been through by this point, and it should be covered in a thorough, integrated manner. Consider trends. The trend is your friend. It's both quantitative and qualitative. You collect data, organize data, and present data. So think about it in these 3 steps. Then you analyze it and tie it together. What should you expect? Well, spend time reading the investor presentation in 10K. I suggest you take between an hour and a half and 2 hours and read. Understand the company. Be wary about hanging on to too narrow a piece of the company. Everything you need will be in these documents. You do not need to go anywhere else. The project should take 3 to 4 hours. That's if you spend time reading the 10K. If you don't take time this time here, it'll take you between 10 and 12 hours. So this is a way for you, if you invest the hour and a half to 2 hours here, this will take 3 to 4 hours. But if you don't do this, it's going to take you about 10 hours. Just want you to plan your time appropriately.